Hi guys, it's Dave here with another video. I've brought one of my very close friends that we have several chats just about pretty much anything. I consider him to be like the Sam I am of my like real life friends. So we have a very similar moral compass in things. I mean, we differ slightly in various things, but like Scott's a good friend of mine, and yeah, I value his opinion on things really. So yeah, Scott, do you want to say anything or introduce yourself or?
Yeah, I'm a good friend of Dave's, and my name is Scott. We're here to have a chat.
Nice. So yeah, so I mean, what did you want to start talking about, or pretty much anything in general, or?
Well, I guess we don't need to go back to the beginning of all our conversations. I guess this is specifically, the intention of this was specifically about currencies, crypto, and
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to start by defining a few. I don't know. I won't call them boundaries exactly, but just an idea of where we are, like topic wise. If you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah. So obviously for me, you know that I'm a major supporter of the XRP, the actual asset itself. Obviously, crypto assets and other bits and pieces I'm very much interested in. Particularly XRP. I know we differ slightly in opinions and various things on our topics and bits and pieces. Huh?
Or if we're all the same.
It wouldn't just. And Bitcoin, obviously, don't know what's going on with that to be perfectly honest. And yeah, it's just basically ethics and things, issues that I have with cryptocurrencies as a whole. I mean, at the end of the day, every project has got its own issues, but just some more than others. And it just, one thing that bothers me is consistency in all of the projects. And like I say, I've got many good friends that I've talked to on Twitter and other bits and pieces. And yeah, they've like become like a family of mine, because like-minded people, and it's just so nice to share that energy with people in general that think a little bit differently to me, because finding things out in the real world, it's just like not many people are in tune with things, or at least how I see things anyway. So Scott's just one of them good friends of mine. So yeah, Scott, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So I have an interest in all the sort of crypto blockchain stuff from a technical perspective, from a development background similar to Dave. So I think there's some merit to it being used in various forms. I think my main issue with the crypto scene, not with the people in it. This isn't a criticism of the people in it necessarily. It, for all intents and purposes, I feel it's lost its way in as much as what it sought to achieve in the early days. Yeah, that seems to be long gone. It still gets held up as a, this is what we're working towards, guys. But as how I see it, I think those days are long gone, never to be recovered. At least not if things carry on in the way they're going. Anyway, let's put it that way.
Sure. And I mean, I can see exactly like where Scott's coming from. So for example, like with Bitcoin back in its day, founded in the middle of 2008 financial crisis, and it was meant to, shall we say, oppose the banking system. And obviously with that going on, which the actual concept of it at the time was absolutely brilliant. But obviously we've got the scaling problems and other bits and pieces with proof of work assets, which I'll get onto. But the issue that I have with Bitcoin itself is that it was founded to stop, or as an alternative currency, to get people to use Bitcoin rather than the financial banks. But fast forward 10 years, it's now being given as ETFs and all these other bits and pieces, which it's kind of evolved into something that all the people that are in it have sworn to become against. And when I see things like Pompliano and other people like the Winklevoss twins saying that like Bitcoin is going to go to the moon, Elon Musk is going to get some space stations, start mining the gold, we need to buy up Bitcoin quick because that's what the value is. And meanwhile, like, it just takes one attack and like the value or the credibility, not the value as such, because it would probably hard fork, but the credibility would have gone, which would ruin the whole concept of Bitcoin, because it'd be like, well, it can't be trusted. And I think if that ever happens, that there's just so much money in there, it's gonna cause turmoil. And I just think that's maybe where things are going. But homing it back onto what Scott said, that I still see the good in crypto, but like there's just certain things that, as one example, is to me is quite worrying. I mean, Scott, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested. We'll come back to it in a second. What you just said about what was it? You still see the good in crypto. We'll come back to that in a sec. So I think, yeah, from a technical perspective, Bitcoin, and then obviously there was a proliferation of other altcoins, or whatever they call themselves, you know, the different ones that are various slight variations on the initial theme. If we're talking about the proof of work stuff, at least, anyway.
Yeah, I don't endorse that in the slightest.
No, I understand that, but obviously that's kind of where it started, wasn't it? And then some people saw the probable unsustainability, ironically, of that. I mean, it should have been relatively clear if anybody actually understood the technology and what was actually going on, that this is where it would have to end up by design.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't really be a shock to anybody. But I guess there was what I call, and I didn't coin this phrase, I'm not claiming ownership of it, but the hype train, as it were, where you mentioned the Winklevoss twins and others, other big names. They obviously got in early. They're not stupid people by any means. So they got in early, and they saw an opportunity to take what they already had, some significant disposable income, and probably hype it into something much bigger in the future. They've got the not just them. I'm not leveling all the accusations at the Winklevoss twins, but those types of people. They were able to get in early with some significant money, which would have got them a lot of value, even back in the early days. It was considered quite a lot of value, and that's only it's done this, hasn't it? But generally speaking, they've kept the hype train going in one form or another, and the dips usually tend to be where people like that just manage to mop up what the little guys have lost anyway. It's a big topic. So I mean, to sort of break it down, I don't know whether you want to sort of think about this in rather than focusing just on Bitcoin. Obviously, it has tons of issues, and you know, not just the least of which the proof of work thing, but
Mm. See,
Some of the other aspects where it's now considered an asset rather than a currency, even though people still call it a cryptocurrency. You know, I see these as sort of blurring the lines almost deliberately, using these terms interchangeably. I don't think actually
I must
it's
admit,
helped any causes.
yeah, I'm just as guilty of that as probably
Well,
anyone
it's
else.
just become
Yeah,
commonplace, isn't it? It's like nobody really makes the distinctions, and it has become an asset. I mean, I'm not pretending that it isn't, like, at least from its start to now, an
yeah.
appreciating asset. If you
But
bought it then and you've got that now, it's worth more.
yeah. But the
But
interesting thing that I find with Bitcoin, I know I'm talking about Bitcoin a lot, and yeah, there are other issues I'll talk about with other projects. But what I like about, what I noticed with Bitcoin, it's gone from early 2008 is like, yeah, we're going to take over the world, you know, and now we're just a store of value, which is like, that's, to me, that's their best argument now, because that's the only thing that they can, like, argue that's to get people to, shall we say, like you say, is join the hype train. Like that to me is like the only, like, argument left. And I mean, at the moment, people and institutions are buying that argument.
well, yeah, but I would say most of those institutions that are buying that argument aren't fooled by it.
No, they just
They're doing
other
very
people.
well out of it. So why would they not go along with it?
Well, yeah, exactly, and like this to me is, it's a serious issue, because for me, I would like people themselves to actually use the crypto, as well as, like, by all means hold it. But for me, what I would like to see is actually it to work what it was actually meant to do. And I believe that Satoshi actually left the project, or Satoshi actually left the project back in 2011, because it wasn't what he thought. And I just think since he's left, we've got companies like Blockstream that's come in, that's tried to make their little development tweaks. I don't know if you've seen that video, Scott, Decentralized Thoughts, on like how banks bought Bitcoin, and like
I've not
basically,
seen that particular video. No.
no, I'll have to show you, because it's, for me, when I seen that, it was quite alarming, because effectively what they were saying was that Bitcoin itself, these, like, companies that are, like, controlling majority of the hash power through, like, these mining pools and other bits and pieces, are basically profiting from what Bitcoin can't do, rather than what it can. So rather than increasing the 1 meg block size up to, like, so it can basically scale faster. I mean, it's still not the solution, but it would help at least make the network be a bit more sustainable. But what's happened is they've deliberately kept it down, high fees, and made all these, like, layer 2 centralized scaling solutions on, which they're profiting so much. These Bitcoin mine, it's a broken system. It's
Yeah,
the
I
whole,
mean,
it's broken.
yeah, but my argument would be that it was broken by design anyway. So
Mm.
while I would concede, and I do concede, the release of the white paper and the technology, the idea of blockchain and all that kind of stuff, it was groundbreaking. I'm not going to suggest it's anything else, but as whether it's fit to be a currency, which is what it was touted as initially, like
Yeah,
you said, it's sort of like, no, let's get away from the central banks because they're all thieves. But we've got this decentralized currency, and this is when you get down to kind of, so not economics as far as, I don't know, Federal Reserve waffle or anything that kind of stuff. Just like, what is the purpose of a currency? What should it do? And as I see it, a currency is just a token that represents something of value that you can conveniently exchange, rather than us lugging around bars of gold or fields worth of wheat in trailers anymore. We kind of moved on to exchanging pieces of paper, and obviously fractional reserve system and all that system went down the toilet fairly quickly. But the idea of having something that just represents some value that you can exchange with somebody else, and agreed upon, and you both know what it is that you're exchanging and what it represents. That's really, to me, all a currency should be doing. And anything else is beyond the remit of a currency, I think. So the whole idea of a store of value, you get into the point where it's almost like the currency itself is perceived as the value, which I think at that point it's already lost its original purpose. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, store of value to me, I know you probably disagree with me, but in regards, for me, what gives crypto value for me is the utility aspect of things. So for me, like, if, for example, it's going to save somebody, like, for example, XRP, there's loads of examples, but obviously XRP is my favorite.
Yeah, it's the one you're familiar with.
Yeah, so it's one that I'm strongly familiar with and that I somewhat, like, considerably understand. So for me, the problem with XRP is a cross-border payments issue. So currently, with the way that the banking system is set up, it's set up where these banks have, shall we say, dormant capital stored across with each other, and then to move that, they have to go through all these windy payment corridors and effectively trade people with other things. Now, for me, that would have some form of value based on the fact that if it was to be used and other people recognize that as value, that to me would have that value, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
So the method of transferring the value has value. Is that what you're saying? Because that's the utility aspect of it.
Yes, effectively, yeah. So, for example, if to solve a customer's or to solve a bank's or whatever pain problems that they have, like, that to me would have value if they was to use, or if they were to use one of the main cryptos as a form of trade to settle their transactions or to settle their pain points. So, for example, moving money from the UK but over to the US, like, to me, that would have value if it was being used and recognized from one side to the other, because there would be a reason for it to exist, which would have value. Does that make sense?
So let's break this down to something really, really simple. We're exchanging pieces of paper again. We've gone back years, right? We're just exchanging pieces of paper, and sure, you're in America, I'm in the UK, and I want to pay you. I don't want to have to travel all the way to America. So there's a courier who's going to take my pieces of paper, which we've agreed the value that they represent, and he's going to take them to you and deliver them to you.
Okay.
Yeah? So that would be like a cross-border payment, if you like.
Okay.
Yeah. The pieces of paper that are making their way across the Atlantic via this, well, unless he takes a long route, across the Atlantic to you, that's the value that we've decided to exchange. But I think it would be unreasonable for me to expect a courier to do that job for nothing.
Quite.
So I would probably pay him whatever it costs to take some pieces of paper across the Atlantic. It's just hypothetical, right? Obviously,
sure.
Not practical for all intents and purposes, but it just breaks the idea down to some sort of simple terms that we can describe and unpick. So
sure,
the idea that the method of transferring value has value. So what I'm saying is that analogous to what I just described? We want to exchange some value, and but we're doing it with bits of paper, physical pieces of paper. I can't digitize them and send them over the ether. So somebody's going to bring them to you, and I pay this guy a small amount to bring it to you. Does that sort of describe what you're?
A little bit, because I mean, what I would say is the courier would get the value, would get some form of value for doing that transaction.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would be unreasonable for me to expect him to do it for nothing.
So if I see, if I see XRP, that would be the courier or the protocol that, or the program or whatever you want to call it, to send that value, if that makes sense. That's how I see that example that you've just given.
Yeah. So the actual pieces of paper that get carried over are separate from that. They don't contribute to the value of the courier's service taking them across the Atlantic for me. I agree with the courier, an amount of pieces of paper, and I give him whatever, and he knows what that also represents, and he says, yes, that's a fair price for me trekking across the Atlantic to give these to Dave.
Yes.
Okay, so here's perhaps where we diverge slightly, if I'm understanding things. Obviously, you correct me if I've got this wrong.
Yeah, no, by all means.
Because on the XRP network, and obviously there's plenty of other examples, but this is the one that we're talking about at the moment. The tokens within it, which are what do we call them?
We'll just call them. I'll just call it XRP. The actual XRP.
The XRP is the token, yeah.
Yes.
So that in our example is the pieces of paper.
Yes.
So I guess this is where I see the issue with what's a currency.
Sure.
And what, because utility is a thing. I'm not disputing the fact that utility is a thing. We pay for things because they have utility or use to us. If something that has no use to us, it's effectively worthless.
Sure.
But whereas in the sort of very basic example of me paying you X pieces of paper because we've agreed, we know what that number of pieces of paper is worth to us at that point in time. And that should be a stable thing, ideally.
Yes.
The amount of pieces of paper I need to give you for you to do a certain thing shouldn't be changing wildly.
I mean, look, even the friction on the US dollar to the pound. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to get too political here, but obviously Brexit happened. It was at 1.5 and it dropped to pretty much 1.4 or 1.3. And then over the period of time, it went from £1, even to the point last year, £1 to $1.2. Now it's creeping back up to £1 is going to give you $1.35, $1.4. And it's just like them kind of swing. Is that the sort of thing that you're saying about it? It's ridiculous.
Well, that is ridiculous. I mean, Brexit wasn't exactly the start of the value of the pound dropping against the dollar. When I was a kid, it was almost $2 to a pound.
Oh yeah, I know.
So it's been dropping for a long time.
Oh yeah, of course.
That that is. I mean, we can bracket that. So that would be an interesting conversation because obviously international currencies and the what do they call it? The international reserve currency or whatever, being the dollar and all that kind of stuff. That's an interesting subject in of itself. But
yeah, I've just sort of given an example over the last few years. I know it was dropping before that, but just mainly an example over the last few years, just to say that even how volatile our own currencies are. I mean, we only need to take a look at Venezuela and other things like that. So
one of the reasons for the volatility of sort of national currencies versus each other is because there is such a thing as the foreign exchange where people buy and sell currencies as if they were assets. And again, that feeds back into the problem as I see it, that the confusion between what is a currency and what's an asset. And I appreciate now we're at a point where it's basically both, but that's the problem. if we stopped, generally speaking, seeing currency as being of value, but just representing something and it being essentially worthless in any other format, you couldn't.
Yeah,
Think of gold or diamonds or whatever. We see them as being like super valuable or whatever. But if you were in a desert, they'd be worthless to you. You couldn't eat them. You couldn't drink them. You wouldn't survive on them.
yeah, yeah.
So value. There's a lot of things that go into defining value.
So,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, so obviously just digressing a little bit based on where we were before, I just slightly went off and talked a little bit about the pound and the dollar, that sort of thing. Obviously what I would add back and say is, obviously, for example, if we were to talk about like the true bartering system, so for example, that I've got eggs, you've got flour, and I want to trade oh my god, like tea leaves, like tea, for example. So if I wanted tea leaves with that person, that they want something that they want something that I want to give them, but yet they don't want what I've got, they want what you've got. So I've got to come up with a trade with you to then trade it with them, which obviously on a bigger scale would cause more friction in regard.
I guess. So by friction, what do you mean by friction? Just it would be more difficult, more difficult to manage.
Yeah. So the way that I see it is, it's good to have a common denominator of what, shall we say, a certain people recognize as value as itself, not something that's changing like the wind. But for example, like we go into a supermarket, and obviously we all recognize that in the UK, at least, that a loaf of bread is worth £1 roughly. And obviously I go in.
It wasn't always £1 though.
No, but that's in my head what I've.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. The fact that the value of the price of a loaf of bread.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
the price has gone up astronomically. Is another conversation we could have.
Yeah, Robflation. Yeah, I know about it. But anyway, it's, if I didn't have, shall we say, pounds, as in that sort of thing, we're going back to the bartering system where that supermarket wouldn't accept my apples, for example, that I was going to give for that loaf of bread. I've got to go and find somebody that's willing to accept apples in order to get them to get what they want me to trade with, so I can get my loaf of bread. That's the type of friction that
Right. So do you not think then that perhaps technology would be able to smooth out that friction somewhat?
Yeah.
So for example, if there was some kind of market whereby you just had a list of things that you had and things that you wanted, and within X number of miles that you would be prepared to travel, and a system just made the connections, like based on locations, not necessarily where you are, but where you would be prepared to go to. So sure. A market of sorts that people could go to. I mean, these are complex issues, but I don't think they're any more complex than the problems people are trying to solve with international cross-border payments, where values are different, massively different. I mean, if you're in the desert, a loaf of bread is probably worth way more to you, for example.
Because obviously you've got the people. If you can't grow the crops, then you've got to rely on people to get them stuff over. It's like, in fact, one of the things that amazes me was when I go on holiday over to Spain, when I went over to Spain, that they had the English newspapers over in Spain on the same day. But obviously they were a lot more expensive because we've paid for the convenience to get them papers over to that particular location. So yeah, I can see like where you're coming from on there. Like, people are going to perceive value as different, because if you can't grow your crops or you wheat over there because obviously the conditions of that sort of thing, like for me, yeah, I would like I totally understand that. But obviously where I differ slightly would be obviously the friction and the actual time and people that it would take people to get that in their daily lives. Now sure, if it's essential, they're gonna have to do it, but if there's an easier way, then they would go with progressively go with the easier way naturally, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. But what I'm trying to say is it would be, I don't think anybody could make an argument to say that that would necessarily be any harder than how things are at the moment. You know, if technology, I mean, we're getting off topic slightly. We'll get back to what we were talking about, but we can come back to this in maybe another episode or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, just imagine if instead of the financial industries focusing all of their energies on international transactions and ways of monetizing that, let's be honest, other ways of sort of propping up the economy and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. There is.
If as much energy was put into creative ways to connect people who have something of value, and it would be of value to somebody not that far away from them, and organising an exchange system. And it doesn't even have to be, this is what I'm saying, it wouldn't even have to be, oh, well, my chickens laid some eggs this morning, I can now go and get some loaves of bread because I don't have a wheat field. It doesn't have to be as sort of literal as that. That is the kind of standard oversimplification of what bartering could be. If for example, we had a currency that was not connected to some floating foreign exchange triggered volatile system, and you've got some eggs, I've got some bread, and you know, but I actually, to be honest, I don't want to part with my bread. But you want some bread. Somebody else might have some bread, but I do want your eggs. So we could agree on an exchange of some pieces of paper, right? It doesn't have to be pieces of paper, but for the purposes of the conversation, because we've agreed, and you know that the person who you go to get your bread from will also recognize that as being for the value that we've agreed upon.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying, but obviously, if we was to put that on a bigger scale, obviously, like you say, there would have to be some form of system in place where we could effectively make them trades or make that thing. But in regards of like, if you're going to say, well, we can do this digitally, for example, I don't know, maybe tokenizing or that sort of thing. If obviously that's what you're saying, then I mean, I think it could potentially work because the currency would probably be like a token of a value of bread, or so you can redeem that for wheat. Is that the sort of thing that you're saying?
Well, no, not specifically, because obviously wherever you happen to be, if there was some kind of drought or bad weather or whatever that affected the local area's ability to produce crops that you then produce bread with, then automatically the value of bread is going to change. So you will immediately introduce volatility again. So there's no simple solution. And that isn't like a lame get out of having a conversation. No. Just these aren't simple things to solve.
No,
and they become less simple the bigger the solution you're attempting to create.
Absolutely, and for me, like going slightly more into like the mainstream crypto side of things, like I would never want there to be one solution to solve a problem. never. Like, as much as I love XRP, like I wouldn't want that to be the only one, because history shows that obviously when you get one entity that, shall we say, controls, shall we say, or a particular thing where it's considered like where it's got most of the power, will tend to control a network and start doing other things to stop other people getting into that space. So I mean, I could just quickly rapidly go through a few examples. So like BP with the oil, like they don't want any water engines and other things. So what they do, they buy the paint, they scupper it. You got the Federal Reserve when in America, they with all the US dollars and other bits and pieces, they don't want anyone else taking over, particularly like India, Russia, Brazil. Like they don't want them taking over because they know that they're going to lose the grip of their power. And like there's dozens and dozens of examples that I can give. That for me, particularly with tech companies as well, it's, to me, then there needs to be many solutions, because if we just rely on one, we get into this particular thing where they end up, well, if you don't do this, we're going to do this, and it's going to do a lot. We need to come away from that, and we need to have, for me, several solutions on solving things, because the way I see it is, if I don't like one solution, I can just go, well, actually, I can then go on to use this solution or be a part of this particular thing, and have like be little like localized circles rather than one big entity where everyone's grouped in by force and don't have a choice to opt out of the current system. That's basically what I'm implying. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I'm obviously in favour of less globalisation and more localisation with everything. I think that's where things need to go. Whether they will or not, who knows? But so yeah, I'm not advocating for a single system. I think that perhaps wasn't clear. What I should make clear is that when I'm suggesting that people can exchange things as per an agreed upon value, I don't think that we need some single global authority deciding on that a loaf of bread is worth X tokens, because there's no possible way, even if even at a single snapshot in time, there's no possible way that loaf of bread could represent X value everywhere all over the world at the same time, just because of the nature of the way the world is.
The problem would be is you could get people that decide that they could effectively buy up the supply, making it scarce, and then drip feeding it back to people at a higher rate as well. So you have got that sort of, I mean, there's going to be issues.
Well, you have that problem because now you've got people who can leverage millions and billions in fictional money to do things like that.
Yeah.
But that's because of the system that currently exists. And I'm not even talking about crypto. I'm just talking about generally.
Absolutely.
The way the finance system works is mostly fictional. And
I think most people in this space would probably agree. I mean, it's quite funny because I know there's a famous line from one of our recent prime ministers that there's no magic money tree. And yet, funny enough, when COVID comes or when there's a war that's going on, that all of a sudden we find a load of money to to fund things. Now, it's like, well, if there's money now, there was always money back then.
Well, there isn't money now, though. This is, future generations will be paying this off forever.
If they ever will.
Well, they won't. It's impossible. It's already impossible. We know that mathematically. Interesting that just the phrase "magic money tree." I don't believe the acronym that distills down to is a coincidence, because most of the world is now operating on the whole modern monetary theory, which is the exact same three letters. Keynesian nonsense that.
And this is where me and Scott do agree on a lot. I mean, create a problem, make a solution, and like this to me is is where I see things. I mean, like for example, let's create a problem with the monetary supply, for example, make people panic, get what we wanted in the first place, and have it yet another power grab, which all goes back into the same, like we need to stop, shall we say, power grabbing, and just have open systems, to me, where people can choose which one they want to be a part of and opt out at any time.
Yeah, I mean, that again, we can have a conversation about the whole Bretton Woods thing. That's a separate topic.
Oh yeah.
So going back to the crypto stuff, though, because we've gone off at a few tangents,
Yeah,
and that's both of us. It's all fine. It's still a conversation. It's good. So getting back to the sort of crypto thing, where you were describing the value of the utility of the system. Yeah.
Yes.
So would you differentiate between the network that XRP flows over and XRP itself, as which bit is the value?
So okay, so for me, I see the value based on where people would come in and build upon that system to give it value. So I mean, the XRP ledger is able to send transactions and send data across from one ledger to another very, very quickly, and, shall we say, very cheaply, because there's no middleman on the ledger itself that's actually charging people fees and all that. It's virtually free to make a transaction. So for me,
is it free or is it not? When you say virtually free,
right? Okay, so it's technically not free, but it is, the transaction is very minimal. So basically, there's like a very small burn rate when you make a transaction. So it's like 0.0001 XRP. Basically, what that's done for, it's been designed to stop people from spamming the system with arbitrage, blooming stuff, or people, I'm going to mess up the network, I'm going to bring it down by sending a load of transactions to myself from one wallet to another. So basically, what they've done is they've got like they've basically formed a way of burning a little bit of the token. So if they was to do it over a long period of time, it would start to hit their pocket, if that makes sense, and they would not do it. So, but for me to make a transaction, it's virtually free. But if I'm going to send 1,500 transactions a second for like the next 24 hours to try and bring the system down, it's going to cost a lot of money over the long run, if that makes sense, because obviously it's going to start to get costly.
So when you say it costs a lot of money, it will eat away the tokens that you have on the network.
Correct. Yes.
So if those tokens were worth zero in real money, it wouldn't cost you anything. Just your number of tokens goes down, and eventually you haven't got anything to send over the system.
Yeah, basically, yes. And obviously, because the tokens are valued at whatever price they are, that's effectively why it would become costly, effectively.
Yes, no, I understand that you can't buy them for free now.
Yes.
That they became available for free to some people, as I understand it. But
yes, like I say, I personally, I know it's where the community is. I personally have an issue with that. But yeah, like I say, is every network has its problems. I mean, what the problem with XRP for me is the entity of Ripple. Now, I don't get me wrong. I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to build out value. I get that, but for me, obviously, the market in general have an issue with what Ripple's doing. And I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie that, like, I don't want to say that the sun shines out their backside effectively, but what I would like to see now is that what tends to happen now in the crypto space, and it's not just Ripple, it's basically what I want to see is that currency or asset or whatever you want to call it get distributed out to, shall we say, a foundation or something, what tends to be the way going forwards in crypto, if they're going to do that, or i.e. not have one party that's running the show. Because for me, if Ripple was to be gifted that XRP like they say they were, and yes, they have, shall we say, given that XRP to other projects and other things, I think they need to take a step back out of that and move that on to someone else that's completely independent from Ripple. Personally, that's what I think that they need to do. But yeah, I'm sure you've got some more stronger views than me on that, Scott.
Probably, yeah. I think getting back to a little bit to what we were talking about.
Sorry.
No.
No.
It's not criticism. Because what you just said, it is connected. But if I continue that, I'm going to go further off at a tangent from what. No. This is always something we can come back to in another context. It's a big topic, so there's lots of stuff, and it's ever changing as well. So what I'm trying to establish is, for XRP specifically, which is what we're talking about, because you understand and you've got an interest in it. The value of the tokens, is what makes them go up in value. Explain to me.
Okay, so for me, how I see it is that the tokens go up in value based on people that decide that that's what they want to build their particular software on, or whatever solution they come up with. That's what they would build. If they decide to use the XRP ledger, that's for example, where I would see the value to be sent. So, for example, what I like about XRP is because it's so cheap in regards to the tokens to actually send, what you can do is do things like streaming, like micro payments across to people that are seeing content online. So, for example, rather than Google getting the profits from advertising, if you was to run an ad blocker on, but you still wanted to support that person, you pay like a monthly fee, which is what I do right from the get-go. And those that are coil enabled, what you can do is you can stream like micro payments, because they decide what value that gets set, and they send fractions of pennies over the internet, which before crypto it was virtually impossible. That's just like, for me, that's one use case. So for me, obviously, if that would give XRP a value, obviously, yes, of course, people are speculating on that as well, like with everything else, like the issue that you were saying earlier. But for me, that's what would help me give, or that's what would help give value. So again, like what Ripple's doing with the cross-border payments, like with banks, institutions, small to medium sized businesses, if it helps them move money over for their customers cheaper, like again, it adds value to me, because that money is being, or that XRP would be used as an alternative to the Nostra and Vostra accounts that the banks are using by people buying and selling XRP, which is one of the most, shall we say, traded cryptos. To me, it's all about use case, and if the coin's worthless, or if the coin costs too much to transfer, or there's predominantly some major entity in the middle of the actual network, not the actual tokens, the actual network itself, then for me, I have an issue, because I'm like, if it's going to cost me £20, or in your equivalent 2.5 hours work, or 3 hours work, or whatever, to send that money across to make one transaction, particularly, I remember Sam he mentioned it, like people that earn 10 cents a day, how the hell are they going to make a Bitcoin transaction when it costs anything from $3 to $27, how many days of work are they going to have to pay to make a transaction on the Bitcoin network? And this, to me, is the token itself. It just defeats the point. So for me, use case is to me is what gives that value.
Right. Okay. So going back to our initial analogy with you being in America and me being here in the UK, and I want to pay you X number of pieces of paper for something that we've agreed upon, and to get them to you, because I don't want to have to travel all the way over, I pay a courier. Yeah. And so courier takes them over, and I've agreed. That is effectively the transaction fee in this analogy. Yeah.
Yes.
So if, for example, the courier says, I think I'm going to up my price for whatever reason, maybe the weather's bad and it would be more difficult journey, or there's a risk of pirates on the high seas or whatever. I mean, yeah. And so he says to me, well, I think I'm going to have to charge you twice as much because it's going to take me twice as long, or there's more risk or whatever. So in that respect, the transaction fee could vary, I guess, in that example.
But there was one thing I think you're missing though, if I can add in.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I'm talking about XRP, what I'm actually saying is, like, if I want to move the British pound over to somewhere else that's got a British pound, like that's not what XRP is there to do, effectively. Like, because the banks have already, unfortunately, in their little clan or club, as what I want to say, is them moving not XRP, they're moving that particular currency from one side of the country to another. There's no problem because there's no intermediate. So if I was to swap you for, if I was to, shall we say, transfer my £100 over to you, I can do that very easily, if that makes sense. But the problem would be where I would need to go if you don't want pounds, you only accept dollars but not pounds. That means I've got to go elsewhere to find a conversion that's going to meet the happy medium, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and usually with any currency exchanges, there's a cost attached to that as well.
Yes, exactly. And
right, but I haven't really missed that, because in the purposes of the analogy that I'm giving you, the pieces of paper don't represent pounds here and dollars in America. They represent a specific amount of value that you and I have both agreed upon. Yeah, so we're talking about a time outside the realm of pounds, dollars, yen, pesos, whatever. Yeah. So it doesn't figure into that specific analogy, because that analogy is trying to simplify I'm trying to establish the process rather than map it as a one-to-one likeness to what we have now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So I understand what you're saying. One of the things that XRP does is seamlessly transact from one currency to another. Is that correct? Would that be fair to say?
Providing there's a liquidity on the other side, then yes, because that's what we call that's what Ripple's trying to push to call what we call the bridge currency. So what you've got is one side, basically, if you've got the liquidity there, so you can able to swap things in and out, then yes, that's what Ripple's developing a use case for XRP. I say a use case because there are many use cases on the XRP ledger itself. That's just one of them. Yes, it might be the main one or one of the main ones, but it is a use case, and anyone can go and try and develop one of their own.
Right. Okay. So for the purposes of describing the process, then, does the utility of that system then also include the fact that it can swap from one currency to another without you needing to particularly be concerned over it and source it yourself? Is that one of the things it's providing?
Well, basically, what's happening is obviously what we're hoping for is there to be more people that are buying and selling the currency or whatever you want to call it, asset onto that exchange. Okay, so
what we're talking about,
so
the currencies that you want to go to and from, or
so
XRP?
what I think what they're relying on is they're relying on traders to buy and sell XRP, which currently is going on. I mean, that's what most people are doing at the moment is trading crypto. But what they're saying is, well, those that are trading, shall we say, speculating on the value of XRP as such, what they're hoping is that, for example, I could buy XRP over in the UK, right? And obviously Ripple, or the actual software that Ripple's developed, would buy the XRP over the UK for shall we say, I'm selling it, for example. So they'll be buying it from me, which I want my like my British pounds, that sort of thing. So they would effectively buy my XRP in British pounds, local currency, to please me. Move that over to where they need to go through a software that Ripple's developed, over to the place where that bank or company or institution wants it, and then buy that back in their native currency, what they want. So, for example, if I wanted if that company was making a trade to the Australian dollar, rather than it taking 5 days and a chaotic courier system that the Swift network's got, what effectively they're doing is finding the best route over into there and finding a trade where someone's willing to buy that buy the XRP, or it doesn't just have to be XRP, but predominantly buy XRP on an exchange, where then that company then has just got some Australian dollars which they can use for whatever they can go about their own business. Does that make sense?
I think so. So these pools of currencies that are sitting there to be given to those who, so you've got your pounds, and for that some XRP's gone onto the system,
Yes.
And then it goes over to another country, and they get their dollars, and some XRP goes back that way. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So like I would effectively wherever it would want to be, providing there's that liquidity there, or that exchange where someone wants to convert it into XRP. Yes, that's what the point. Well, that's
and the liquidity is provided by
is provided by people like me that want to buy it, sell it, that sort of thing. And what they're hoping for is obviously what Ripple's hoping to do is to grow the network, hopefully organically. Grow the network organically. So when you get enough businesses and institutions that use this particular network, what effectively they'll do, well, there's someone on this side that's putting a buy order in on the software that Ripple's provided. There's someone on this end that's putting a sell on that, and then with Ripple, they go, well, that's a match on the exchanges because they're providing APIs. Oh, because basically they're using other exchanges with APIs, so they know like a complicated way of how to move all that XRP around, if that makes sense. So what they're hoping to do is find a way of matching that so they can settle effectively in real time. Does that make sense?
Well, kind of. I mean, there's a number of things, I suppose, that could be observed about that. Getting back to the what is the value? Where's the value? Okay, so talking about currency again.
Yeah.
Right, I'm not trying to labour the point. I'm just trying to establish.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
What not just what in the XRP world or the Ripple world or whatever is considered value. Because obviously, this is my point. Like, it's almost like value is in the eye of the beholder, so to speak. But for the purposes of the currency, Yeah. If the system that transfers is providing value because of the utility it provides, is that in the same way that the way that I could bank transfer some money to you, the bank system provides that
Yeah,
value.
but the problem with the problem with the banking, the problem with the current banking system that we've got now is like
I'm not making an argument for the current banking system. You understand me?
yeah, I agree. Basically the argument, 2 seconds, let me just close this down. Right, the obviously that this is how I see things. So like obviously sending direct money from one to the other, no problem. But when you ask the bank that like effectively, can you do this for me, they're going to set a ridiculous fee and profit from it. So all these small companies that like effectively that want, like for example, I'm trying to think of some companies in London, I think TransferWise, are they the big one? I can't remember now. But there's some small companies over in London, and I should know, like Mercury FX, that's one. So if they wanted to move money across to America, they'll probably have to ask some ridiculous bank like JP Morgan or some ridiculous financial institution. And because they know they don't want them stealing their customers, what they would do is they'll charge them a ridiculous fee to move that money quickly. So it costs them, the banks are then going, well, we're going to charge you a massive fee for the privilege of doing it quickly, or the privilege of doing it like this, because like one of the reasons why I absolutely resent the banks. So basically what we're trying to do is level the playing field. So we, rather than the big banks themselves reaping all the profits, by doing it this way, you're relying on, shall we say, traders and other people like me, the small guys, to buy, and other institutions to buy and sell XRP over. Then you're at mercy to the exchange fees. But because there's so many exchanges that charge so cheaply, it basically means if that Mercury FX, for example, wants to send money over to America, and rather than use JP Morgan and then charge them 20 quid for the privilege of moving £200, they're going to use the XRP or Ripple network, where they can move that for probably 10 pence, less than that.
Mm-hmm.
And okay. to me, that's one of the reasons why I like the idea of opting out and letting the market find a better solution than what's currently being offered. Because at the moment, the system that's currently here as of today, it just doesn't work, because it's just like, it just costs too much money to move money abroad.
So okay, I get that. The difference in the amount of money the bank will charge you to move some money versus Ripple.net or whatever we're calling it, or any of these other systems. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, like I say, I'd like to say there's not just a RippleNet, there's others, because the problem is, I know we'll get back on it in a minute, but if you look at WhatsApp, it was meant to be a private messaging network, i.e. a new system that's new, promising, going to deliver a lot of hope and other bits and pieces. But over time, Facebook comes in, buys it up, and then it becomes Facebook app, and then it's all become integrated into one system where they're sending our private data back over to Facebook. So I mean, this to me is essential that there is more than just one system, because if not, there's gonna be a ways where it just gets taken over. So it's just the way that history's shown us. But
agreed. Yeah. So I'm not even going to consider debating that. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Learning lessons from history is something that I think is a dying art.
Yeah, but
so
going back to the actual Ripple net in moving transactions, to me that to me would make sense. Right, it basically is a way of undercutting the banks, so which would force the banks themselves, if they want to stay and keep this business, either drop your prices in nearly in level with what RippleNet's doing, or basically it's giving the banks a kick up the backside to actually say improve your services or go bust, effectively. And that to me, I love that, absolutely love it, because for me it's they've got, it's basically stop screwing over people if you want to stay relevant, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a nice idea. I like the idea of that. I'm not sure that it's working out that way in practice exactly. So if we're talking about leveling the playing field, I'm not sure how level you as somebody with some of your money that you've worked for,
Sure,
providing the liquidity for that system. I'm not sure how level that makes you compared to like the CEO of Ripple, for example.
No, and like this to me is where I agree with you. So like I said a minute ago, like they have to build, like if Ripple want this to be successful, they're going to have to build this network effectively, organically, and not just rely on me. So what Ripple's doing at this moment in time, and like I think it's the best way how they're going about it at the moment, because obviously businesses and banks and institutions are not ready to, shall we say, dip their toe into crypto. What Ripple's done is saying, look, hey, look, you can use the current system on our net better than any of our competitors, i.e. Swift and other bits and pieces. But if you want to use XRP or what they call ODL, which is on-demand liquidity, if you want to use that, so where you don't have to basically come up with the capital or pay for these Nostro Vostro accounts that are just holding dormant capital around the world, effectively onto these different corridors where they're effectively trading, like you said earlier, trading an agreed value at that particular thing, because they've got a relationship with another bank. So effectively, rather than all that capital being wasted and just sitting there, what they're saying is, look, if you want to use the open market to source XRP and get your currency, which is worked out to be cheaper than them holding that money, because obviously they want to cut from it with all that money that's sitting there, what happens then is banks can actually go, well, yeah, we don't necessarily want to hold the Venezuelan dollar, but somebody over in Venezuela is buying XRP, but we only want to hold a little bit of the Venezuelan dollar for a very short time whilst we can settle with that particular client. So that to me is a good way, is a good use case of banks don't necessarily need to hold the currency. They can use the open market, and that's what they call it, on-demand liquidity for. It's
right. Okay. So to go back to a couple of the, I take your point. I understand that. To go back to a couple of things that you said earlier. So the point that you'd made, well, it was somebody else's point, but you sort of reiterated it about how with the cost of a Bitcoin transaction being whatever it is,
yes,
how is anybody earning $1 a day meant to transact on that?
Yes.
I suppose my point is that is a good point, but that point stands for any system where there is a fixed transaction fee, because it's still a greater percentage.
Sure.
Like, so on XRP, it's not a fee. You said it kind of just gets burnt a tiny bit.
Yeah, a very minuscule fraction, but somebody that could be a lot. I understand that.
Yeah. So I don't think it effectively solves that problem, because the system is automatically kind of tilted in favor of those whose currency is worth more.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. But obviously, this is an issue, and I can see exactly where you're coming from. How would you then, if we were to say, okay, yes, we'll get rid of the burn rate on the XRP ledger as such, so there's no burn rate, and someone decided to attack that system, how in a decentralized way would you stop them from using that system?
I have no idea, because that's not really what I'm proposing. I'm not suggesting that the burn rate should be abandoned. What I'm trying to say is that there isn't a solution to this that actually works for everybody.
No.
And so if we're going to accept that different countries or different whatever, I mean, I get it. The whole countries were just arbitrarily drawn borders, and historically it was all about wars and territorial. I'm down with all of that, but I'm not in favour of kind of
Sure.
of like caring specifically about, oh, this is my specific area, but because of the nature of, even if you just decided to get rid of all the borders right now, okay, so the world lives as one, as John Lennon sings, right? You've still got a point, or you've still got an issue whereby in certain areas of the world, there is going to be a higher demand for some things because they're unable to produce it themselves than others.
Sure.
And because of that, I think this is one of the reasons why naturally, and I'm not advocating for the kind of adversarial way that these have come about over the millennia.
Sure.
Naturally, you end up with kind of groups of people in areas where, oh well, you know, my preferences are, I like fish.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So you'd want to be on in a country or we're not talking about countries, in a geographic location whereby fish would be easier to come by. Yeah. If that was your thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And so culturally, if fish was important to you and represented more than just food, it might represent something else. These are just examples, but you can find real life examples of this sort of thing in all kinds of cultures, right? Then those cultures are going to gravitate towards areas where fish are more plentiful.
Yes.
Yeah. Theoretically, that's just like, you know, thought experiment type thing. And so that would mean probably in those areas, fish, the price of fish, it might be lower because they're easier to get, the availability is higher.
There's more
but the demand is also higher, so that might balance itself out. But then in another area where people hear about these fish and they sound really nice, can we get some of these fish? Like a landlocked country, or I keep saying country because it's just such a habit, isn't it? A landlocked area where there are no easy access to fish in plentiful amounts there, but people decide, oh, I like the idea of fish. Then you've got to factor in, well, we need to get them from somewhere.
Yeah, a little bit like the newspaper. Yeah, like I mentioned about getting that newspaper over to Spain, so holiday.
Exactly that.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. No, I know you do. I'm not trying to explain this to you. This is setting the point I'm trying to make is that it sort of only becomes a problem when the demand is there that can't be fulfilled.
Yes.
Yeah. If nobody cared about fish and there were no lakes or seas nearby, it wouldn't really be a problem.
And this is the problem at the moment that with XRP as such at the moment. Ripple is trying, shall we say, to bootstrap the liquidity and get more people using XRP for payments, because obviously this system to me would work great if more people were using it, but obviously
But that's what every builder of every system always says. If everybody used my system, we'd be fine. That's literally the thing everybody says.
Agreed. Now, to me, like, if they're like, because I know we mentioned a bit about the burn rate, about obviously that's going to be more expensive for someone that's at the lower end of the scale compared to someone that's at more than the higher end of the scale. See, for me, like at the moment, that is better than what we've got today. It may not be perfect, like you say, but like I say, is in an open, true, honest system. If more people were going to, if there was a better system out there, I would expect somebody to come in and come up with a solution to that.
Well, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's deciding what the problem is that you're trying to solve here. So, for example, earlier on you mentioned about creating a problem to then provide the solution type thing.
Absolutely.
And what I would sort of say to that is that absolutely happens. It's happened for millennia in one form or another. And how I see the sort of sales pitch for the international trading as far as crypto goes, not just XRP, it's not the only one,
no,
but
sure.
It's one of its major selling points, is a bit like with the fish thing. If you don't care about fish and there are no fish in your area, it's not a problem to you.
Yes.
It only becomes a problem if you desperately want fish and there aren't any available. And then you've got to find some mechanism, some system that allows you to cost effectively get fish to where you are, or however you want to, describe that process.
Yes.
So for people that really like fish, it would probably be better for them to move somewhere where fish are plentiful.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go somewhere with that. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, and obviously, if there were no borders and no boundaries, and you could just go where you liked, that would be doable. I appreciate that's not where we are. Okay, but if you think about the notion that is a problem, it's a problem for a probably small amount of people. But if you imagine a situation like that where nobody's ever heard of fish because, they're not around, or they know of them, but they don't desire them desperately because they've never had fish, and whatever. I mean, it's kind of a silly example, but it's just to try and illustrate the point. And somebody comes along and says, well, what we really need here is an international fish exchange. What we're going to need people to do, we really need everybody to buy into this system, because otherwise people just don't have reasonable access to fish at a reasonable cost. Now, if you didn't care about fish, and the majority of the people where you were didn't care about fish, you might consider that creating a problem that doesn't really exist.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the same way that I'm 48, I don't think I've ever needed to send a large sum of money internationally urgently.
No.
So the problem of the banks rinsing me for 10, 20, 50% of what I want to send, it's not a problem for me. It's not a problem for most people.
Right.
And I guess it's perceived as a problem.
And
it sounds like a real problem. And we all know the banks are crooks anyway.
I think the thing is we of society have been drummed in on an educational level that, like, we've got to get the latest smartphone, or we've got to get the latest bits and pieces. And obviously when people want to buy the latest smartphone, and I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, I love my trainers. I absolutely love, like, trainers and bits and pieces, but like, the thing is like, if I was going to buy a pair of trainers that I want, that I like, that's, shall we say, over in America or over elsewhere, and
Yeah.
I'm like, well, there's no other way of me getting them trainers, but I would like them, because that's, unfortunately, that's what society has drummed into me. And yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm fully in control of my own actions, but it's just something. Yeah, it's just, I don't know why, but it just is.
Well,
Um,
it's nothing wrong with seeing something and liking it and
no,
wishing you could buy it.
yeah,
There's nothing inherently wrong with that.
no. And if, obviously, the only way of me getting it was to do an exchange from, shall we say, a pound, obviously, for me to exchange my money over to someone in the US, like, to me, that would be that to me, there would need to be something in there as an exchange, or something, unless if that guy is willing to accept pounds as his currency, which he might as well do, which there'd be no problem involved in that. But currently, at the moment, obviously, he will only accept dollars, because obviously that's his native currency. So therefore, there's got to be an exchange, or something in the middle of it to settle that transaction.
Yeah.
So,
And I guess what we're talking about, though, is a thoroughly modern problem. This is like first world problems, isn't it?
yeah, it blatantly is.
So that doesn't mean it's like not an issue. I'm not dismissing it entirely.
But yeah, I mean, the question is, do I need them trainers in order to live and survive? Probably.
No, well, it's not even that. We're allowed to want things, even if they don't. It's not life and death. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing people wanting nice things. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is, in your entire lifetime, you might buy, I don't know, 100 pairs of trainers, right?
Okay.
If you're really into trainers, okay?
Yeah.
If you worked out, even if the banks were taking 50% of the transaction cost, right? If you knew that was just the price of getting some trainers from America, again, I'm not defending the banks here, right? And I'm not saying I think a 50% transaction cost is fair, right? That's just not the point I'm trying to make. But in the grand scheme of things, like, it's still not a massive problem.
No, but
if your business, however, is buying and selling thousands of pairs of trainers from America and selling them in, then I guess that's going to impact you further, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, governments decide that they want to stick their beak in with imports and other bits and pieces in there, but forgetting that issue. Like, if it was going to say cost, shall we say, 5 times as much, either people would naturally factor that in. So, like, for example, when I get my wage packet, I think, well, that's what I'm getting. I don't look at what I should be getting and then take away my deductions. I look at the end. So if people are going to look at that end result and go, actually, there's no problem, I'm happy to pay that price, then yeah, this solution would be, like you say, would be pointless. But if someone could say to me, well, actually, like, if you did it this way, and like stick the middle finger up to the banks, but actually you could get your trainers for £30 cheaper, by sending some money this way rather than go through the traditional system, I'm down for that.
No, I understand what you're saying. So from that perspective, though, like, the sort of cost of the solution versus the cost of the problem to you personally.
Okay.
Yeah, if you weighed it up like that, and again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be looking for alternatives to the banks. Absolutely, we should.
Absolutely.
I guess my point is, I'm unconvinced that creating yet another international system with all of the overheads that's going to have, and the requirement for liquidity wherever that's going to come from, and the volatile nature of the tokens changing in value, and yeah, it is a problem. And I think what I'm trying to say is, I haven't got the one-stop shop solution to that, because there just isn't one.
No.
This is one of those problems that is, it's not just, oh well, we haven't figured it out yet, or we haven't got the technology yet. There are too many variables at play here. I mean, let's be honest, you don't buy trainers from America anyway, you buy them all from China. I mean, that's essentially where they really come from. They might go via various other middlemen who are all taking their slices, and middle women, of course.
Sorry, I'm
I'm not correcting you. It's just, it's just a small aside. But
you're right.
The point here is the problems aren't just the fact that, hey, the banks are charging me a little bit too much on a transaction to another country. They're much more deep-rooted than that. That's how I see it, and I don't know that.
Okay. So
this is the solution. If right. I accept your premise that it looks like it could be better than what we've got, but it's still predicated on various aspects that are fundamentally wrong and that should be addressed
to start with. So
it's almost like wallpapering over a wall with big cracks in.
I think at the end of the day is that we're talking about the system as a whole is broken. We're asking a broken system to fix itself. I mean, it's never gonna do that. Never.
No. And I guess because of the, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Carry on.
It's just another thing, obviously, as well, what I would say as well. It's not just about the liquidity aspects of things as well. For example, if I'm not rooting for Amazon in one bit, but let's just use these for example. So because they know that the monetary system or moving money in how it currently is painful, what's happened now is because they know they can't send little transactions like I bought my pair of trainers, we'll send that. They have to keep that money because it's cheaper for them to do that in one go, if that makes sense. So because that's just one aspect that I've spoken about. There's plenty of other problems that this particular system does better than the current one that's here. So we've got what Amazon do. They tend to hold their transactions in one go, then send it off in one big lump sum. Like maybe that's done once a day or once every few days or whatever their business does. So basically they collect that particular part and then they'll move that money through a bank in one system because it's less chaotic to do that chaotic transaction once rather than 100 times, because it would just clog up the system. So by doing it little and often, effectively, what happens at the moment is you've got large payments that build up and they get sent over. So low volume of, so let me get this right. High payments with a lot of money and low amount of times that they do it versus small payments and a lot of times they send them, so effectively. So rather than send like one big wad of cash as one transaction, you could send like, well, I'll send them in like little £10 notes, or for example my trainers, that would be classed as one transaction rather than that company hold that money because the system is so chaotic for 5 days or however long they want to do it and go, you know what, we've got a lot of money now, we're going to send that over. Because what happens is there's obviously they are effectively betting, I know obviously we spoke about this, but they are effectively hedging against that currency against the other, shall we say, if they've got dollars and they want pounds, because they're holding these dollars, they're hoping that the pound doesn't go stronger against the dollar because they're going to lose a lot of money effectively. So these are the problems why on a bigger scale that this in the current system that we've got, it needs to be addressed.
I guess so, but then we're getting back to the point I was sort of getting towards earlier, which is this only becomes a problem for people doing large amounts of international transactions.
Yes.
And that's a fairly small number of people in the grand scheme of things. 7.5 billion people, you know, is a tiny fraction of companies.
Well, it's not just
shoveling.
companies. It's not just companies. You've got people like, for example, that work in Mexico that want to send money back to their families. So, for example, what happens there is they work in Mexico and they want to send money back to someone in Poland, for example. Obviously, with their current system, they're going to charge them like 10% of their wages, where they could probably on a better system, they could probably charge them 1%. So, I mean, it's not just necessarily the big businesses. I know we tend to think about that, but there are the little people as well that want to supply for their families.
Yeah, so fair point, but that is symptomatic of another problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you
that's
say,
not the problem. There isn't the fact that people can't just earn one currency which is worth a lot more compared to their home currency and send it back, and it's worth like 5 times as much there,
yeah,
and they're losing half the value in the transaction. That seems like a problem for them at that individual level, but the fact that they even need to do that is part of the problem. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
So and again, I'm not saying that I've got an answer, because that's just the nature of having different areas where you know, sand is plentiful in the Sahara, right? You wouldn't be able to set up a shop there selling sand and do very well.
Yeah,
but you know, in the town I live in, it costs me X amount for a bag of sand.
Yeah, I think the thing is, for me, like the way I sort of see it, and again, I'm probably just as guilty, because I know I said like create a problem. I'm well aware of that, but like for me, if that's what people want to do, like don't get it wrong, like I might think it's bizarre, but if that's what people want to do, surely, like, one, they should be able to, as stupid as it sounds.
Well, it isn't stupid. I completely understand why somebody would want to do it. For the exact same amount of hours of work, you can go to another country, earn X dollars, or whatever, send that back to your original country, and it's the equivalent of working 5 times as many hours. It makes complete sense, and it's the exact same reason why most companies now don't produce anything, and it's all produced in China.
Yeah, I know.
Or other poor Eastern countries. Yeah, it's the exact same principle. And I understand it.
Yeah, and then the beer flu comes, and then they stop the whole production, and they want you to feel sorry for them.
Yeah, I mean, we're straying into separate things, but from that perspective, from a purely economic perspective, why wouldn't you do it? It's not stupid. It makes complete sense.
I guess, yeah. I'm in full agreement.
And so I guess if you're going to sort of just look to try and make that easier and cheaper for people to do, why won't everybody just that you sort of incentivizing the wrong thing here is how I see it. Well, ideally, you don't want countries outsourcing all their work and labour to places where labour's cheap as chips and never producing anything of their own.
I guess would you say though that is a side effect of the system, or a potential of a newer system, because obviously it's more efficient?
Well, I would say it certainly would likely. I'm not saying I'm predicting anything here, but if the thing that stops people from outsourcing the stuff is the cost of the transaction, if you make that cost of transaction less, they're much more likely to do it.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And again, it is another problem. Because
I mean, it's already a colossal problem that most Western countries don't really produce very much.
No,
most of the stuff we produce in the West is
I mean,
financial
totally,
services and bloody
yeah,
advertising.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
which none of that is
yeah.
actually productive and doesn't actually help anybody other than like bank balances.
No, and I mean, I'm sort of guilty. I'm sort of guilty as part of that. But the thing the thing that I see is, yeah, it is a problem as a whole. And the way that I see things is that if the traditional banking system don't feel threatened in the way that they're going about their business, i.e. it costs too much, or they're ripping people off deliberately. If there's a cheaper alternative, it's basically, well, that it makes them treat people a little bit fairer, because if they don't and they go elsewhere, it's like if you've set up a bad business and you've got like bad reputation, effectively it's like that, because if you get enough bad rep because that you don't like the manager, or that the company's crap or whatever, and you get the feedback, it's because of this, because of that. Like, surely, like, that company would obviously have to take that feedback and act on it pretty quickly, or else that they're going to go bust, because people ain't going to use them because they're not happy with them. And it's the same. It's the same with these banks. If they don't like the fact that someone's charging 90% cheaper, then they're going to have to nearly match it, or do better, which surely is a good thing, because they've got a choice how they pass on them savings. So, like, some companies will pass on the savings to the customer. Some will keep on.
Can you think of one that does that?
Sorry?
Can you think of one that actually does that?
Well, not entirely, no. But like, this is the point. Should there be one that does? Like, some companies have got a lot to answer for. So should you, obviously you're relying on the company to pass on the savings for a customer, but if they don't and somebody else does, i.e. looks after the customers better and gives them a better service, then they're actually gonna go to the one with the least friction.
Like, principles of free market, I'm down with all of that. So
yeah,
you know, actual competition in you know, making
not
other companies, like,
yeah,
I get all that. I'm fine with that. The problem here with particularly banking and competing with that is there isn't a free market for that.
No, and sadly not.
It's you know, it's not just regulated, but there's all sorts of laws on what you can and can't do with your own money.
Absolutely,
and so on.
yeah.
And that's only getting worse. So again, it's complicated. I'm not saying I've got all the answers or even any of the answers, and I'm certainly not suggesting that nobody should be looking for better solutions.
And I've actually given this a little bit of thought in regards of various things. Now, how I would like to see, because obviously at the moment there's all this DeFi stuff that's coming around. I mean, I think we're a long way off, me personally, or at least some way off. The fact that there's not one that you could probably truly use today, but how I see potentially this going is, I'd like there to be, like, if you don't like how a system works, for example, if I make a transaction on my card to a company and they scam me and I pay through a credit card or debit card or whatever, there's a good chance that with these rules and regulations that the banks can, shall we say, charge back that company and take that money, i.e. if it's been used legitimately. Now, sure, it's open to abuse, but yet that is some of the protections that get offered as part of that. Now, for me, like, I'm obviously I'd consider that to be a good one, but yeah, on the receiving end, it like I say, it can be open to abuse. Now, to me, if someone doesn't like that and is happy to use another system that doesn't have all of them protections on, i.e. it's better for people, that system should absolutely be around, because people should have a choice of, do we want to use this system that's there to protect me, or do I want to use an open system where I'm subject to the rules of that system? And like you say, with open markets and stuff, like that's how I see this should be. But whether it actually happens like that, because like governments think that we should know better, so therefore we shouldn't do that. Like, it should be out there for people to try it to be tried and to be tested. If it doesn't work due to the fact that people don't like it, then that's a completely different matter of saying, well, we're just going to shut you down.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about several different issues there, all of which I acknowledge exist, absolutely. But think about the exchanging pieces of paper. Right? Imagine there was a very, very quick way of me getting a piece of paper to you in America. So instead of it taking a courier 2 weeks to row his canoe over the Atlantic, whatever, there was a quicker way of me just directly paying you some pieces of paper that you knew what they were going to be worth when they arrived at your door, because you and I both agreed on what that was worth, and it was sort of also recognised as being worth that with the people that you would also want to exchange with.
Yes, and also as well is this actually has been obviously been in the community, and that it's one of the actual things that I have noticed. So on the current traditional system, you're going to send £100 and you don't know exactly how much you're going to get in dollars until on the day. So now what you're doing is, if you say, well, we're going to guarantee you $130 because the exchange rate is 1.3, you've now got someone in the middle that is betting on that, or betting against that transaction rate. So if it goes up, they're going to pocket from it. If they go down, it's going to lose on it, which again adds to that friction of some middleman that's actually going to take that money. Now with RippleNet, what they're doing is, because you're taking a high volatile asset or a currency, or I know you probably, to be honest, I don't know what you want to call it, but let's just,
well, it's kind of masquerading as both, isn't it? And that's one of the issues.
All right, let's, for argument's sake, let's just call it a currency, okay? You're taking that currency, right, over a network, right? So the fact that can move to another currency, which is very highly volatile but is quick to make payments, if you can do that, you're holding a higher risk asset for a lower period of time, which is less risky than a lower volatile asset over a long period of time. Because let's face it, they're all volatile. But I mean, if I was to get the price of XRP up now, in 3 seconds, the price has barely changed. Okay, it might move 1% tops, but I doubt it will move that quick in 3 seconds. But let's just say that is the case. So because what they can do, they can get the payments in real time. So this is what you're going to get, bang on. Like, you make that transaction, this is what you're going to get. Do you accept? Yes. Bam. That's what you get. Because they can do it so quickly, because there's no need for a middleman to be involved.
I understand that. I completely get the mathematics of, high volatile short time, low volatile long time, and I mean, you could be lucky or unlucky both ways. So what there's no guarantees, but
so what the government done, I believe that they want this new ISO 222 or whatever it is, and one of the requirements is that person needs to give them is to know how much they're going to get. But in reality, what that does is it just adds more red tape and increases the price, because you've just added a middleman in there that's hedging against your what you call it, your transaction. So all you've done is you've just added a middleman, so just for the convenience, because that's what they've decided that you need, and then all of a sudden you've got a middleman that's leeching off and effectively costing you more in the long run, because they're going to want to cut from that.
Of course, and I'm not advocating for that at all. And that's interesting, the phrase you just used, because they've decided that's what you need. And I think that's kind of my point with any of these solutions that help people trade internationally cheaper and quicker. Like, is that what humanity really needs?
On a global, like, do I need this in order to survive?
No, that's not what I mean. No, I don't mean it that way. Because of course, like, you know, we could probably exist on bread and water, like, you know.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm not talking about need as in for survival. What I'm talking about is the most pressing issue afflicting humanity at the moment.
Yeah,
inability to cheaply make international trades within seconds. I would posit that it really isn't for 99.9% of the population.
I get it.
And those that it is a problem for, it's a problem that's not the problem you want to solve.
I think the thing is unfortunately with these systems itself, is if you solve one problem, you've created two more. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And I can see exactly what you're saying, because like for me, like the problem that I have, like ever since I watched this Thrive documentary over 10 years ago, which I know you've watched some of it. And like I say, I really follow that movement a lot, and this is what's opened up my eyes to various things. And one thing that frustrates me is I would like to see these banks ideally go away, or in probably might be a better way, if they're going to stay, I want the good ones to stay. None of this like, well, we need to come to you, government, because we need your support. Can you do this? Blah blah blah. If they haven't done good enough and treated their people fairly, they don't deserve to be here. Like, and they don't deserve to be propped up by some government. That's like, if they fail, they fail. Now, for me, like I said earlier, if someone can find a better way to make them improve their services, then I'm all for that. But like you say, there is potentially a problem where it could, like, for example, it could source more jobs in China because of, obviously, it's because it's become so more efficient. But I don't have the solution for that. I really don't.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't think there is a single magic bullet solution to fix this, other than just. So when I gave that example at the beginning of just you and I want to give you X pieces of paper because we've agreed on the value, and that's the exchange. Yeah, that's really as far as currency should go. The minute you start introducing other things into the equation, it ceases to be the problem. It ceases to be the solution and becomes the problem.
Yes,
I mean?
Yeah, I do get what you mean, but like you say, this is the problem with the system as a whole, rather than, like, I know we've talked a lot about XRP, but rather than it be XRP, I mean, XRP or what Ripple's done make the system better, but
any crypto or all of them,
100%.
Yeah, I mean, imagine there was a system introduced where the central bank said, you know what, we're gonna underwrite all of the cryptos. We'll accept any and all of them, And we'll provide the sort of transfer mechanism, and we'll do it instantaneously because we've got the tech to do it. If they introduce that tomorrow, that effectively solves all of those technical limitations and cross-border. But I'm not sure that's really where we want to go.
No, it does, but then we get to the same problem where we are now, is that centralized systems, to me, is where they go, well, because you're using our system, we're going to then charge you like the privilege of using that system, or else.
Well, even if they did it for free. Let's just pretend for a moment the central bank suddenly said, we're not even going to have any transaction fees, but everything has to go through us. I still don't think that's where we really want to go.
No, it's not. But I know in general people would. But again, it's a sheer control. So, for example, I totally get your point. I totally get your point, and I'm just thinking about it because, like you say, with Facebook, what they've done is they want to bring out what they call this Libra token, and they want everybody on their Libra token at whatever cost. And then slowly, what you will find is that your rights are going to go away. Like, what about people that they ban on Facebook because I say that the sky's red and they do me for false information? What happens then? Do I lose access to my my Libra account because they go, oh well, it's decentralized? Yes, great, my money's still there, but I need to log through. I need Facebook to get access to that wallet. So what do I do then? You know.
Well, and this is a bigger topic again, isn't it? And one I think worth exploring at another time. But you know, it's not like the Bank of International Settlements aren't considering these things for currencies, digital currencies, and so on.
Yeah,
and aren't entertaining various companies that are already out there, Ripple included, as being possible templates for their solution.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is like, for me, that is the wrong approach, because it should have nothing to do with the Bank of International Settlements. Like, the word international scares me, like, because what they're suggesting is that one system should fit all. Like, for me, like, I want it to be that people want to use XRP because it is, in my opinion, one of the best ones out there. But yeah, someone might disagree. Someone might say that another coin, XLM, is the best one, and they want to use that. Like, it should be down to them what they want to use, rather than some big institution saying, well, this is what you're going to use. Like, if someone's going to defeat XRP, I'd like it to be one that's actually more fairer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole point when you're talking about people having a choice is one doesn't necessarily defeat the other, like pummel out of existence. It's just more options. But yeah, trying to think of a way of analogizing the point I'm trying to make. If you've got systems that require a level of capital sitting there in them to provide the liquidity, for example, and they don't all require that, but some do. And depending on the amount of liquidity within the system, changes the value of the token that's exchanged. Is that how it works? Is that what we're saying?
Well, the idea is that if there's, shall we say, with XRP, if there's, shall we say, a million XRP on a buy and sell wall on one exchange, rough on average during the day. Okay, let's just say, obviously it's going to fluctuate, but let's just, for argument's sake, let's just say that sure. On average there's about a million XRP sitting on that exchange as a buy wall and sell wall at these different rates. Okay, now if XRP was a dollar, there'd be $1 million in there. If XRP was at $10, there'd be $10 million worth. So obviously the higher price of XRP, the more liquidity there would be on that exchange if the amount of XRP is there to back that up, if that makes sense. And because it's not backed by anything, there is no one in there that's going to say, well, I'm going to provide you with £1 million or whatever, and then there's no one taking a cut, because I'm like, well, I'm giving you my £1 million to provide that liquidity. I'm going to want some form of return from it, because that's how people have become, if that makes sense. They want to return out of their money for providing capital, which goes back to the problem with, does that make sense?
Kind of. So what I'm trying to establish is, you've got 5 people that have each got £1,000 of XRP, yeah,
Okay.
and you've got 5 people with $1,000 each of XRP. So there's your 2 pools of liquidity, yeah, in 2 different currencies.
So say that again, just so I can.
You've got 5 people,
yeah,
with $1,000 each of XRP.
Okay.
Because they bought it at 1 token per dollar.
Okay.
And you've got 5 people with £1,000 of XRP.
Okay.
I mean, already I'm kind of seeing some disparity, because the pound is worth more than the dollar.
No,
so
right. No, it's
the same amount of money.
It's the amount of XRP that they have. So obviously, when they buy the XRP, you're taking it. You're not saying, well, I bought it at this. That's irrelevant. It's how much XRP you have. So, for example, I could buy XRP over here, move that across somewhere else, and have dollars if I wanted to.
Yes, I understand that for the purposes of the system, as in just transferring the stuff. But for most people in crypto markets, the price that they buy it at is absolutely not irrelevant at all. It's the most relevant thing in the world, because they want to buy it low and then sell it high.
Yeah, of course.
So, and that's where you've got this conflation of an asset versus a currency.
Yeah, I think I mean, when I look at it, I always compare it to my current, or to the pound. When I look at it to see how much it's worth. Like, granted, yeah, I mean, there's part of me that's speculating on the price, like, but like for me, that's just one use case. I mean, I could use XRP to, for example, for coil, or to send that to someone else. That do you know what I mean? So it's beyond the use case of what Ripple's doing. That's just, like I say, it's not the only solution to XRP. There are others on there. There are other ones that have got other things on there, for, like, for example, there's one Sologenic that's more for, like, tokenizing, shall we say, like, I know you'll say, is it essential for humanity? But you've got Sologenic, where they can tokenize tokens and stocks. So what they do is they tokenize the stocks, which is driven the mechanics on the XRP ledger for basically book auditing, if that makes sense. So in order to use the Sologenic system, you're going to need to hold the XRP, or have some XRP on there, in order to, if that was your thing, to trade stocks and shares on the XRP ledger by tokenizing it. I mean, that's just another use case that it can do. I mean,
yeah, but it's a bit like saying there's multiple use cases for money, like pounds, because I can go and I can buy a tent with it, or I can go and buy a car, which enables me to drive somewhere, or so.
Yeah,
what you ultimately use your currency for is kind of, yeah. There's an infinite number of use cases from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is obviously, at the end of the day, it's, if people want to use it on that system, then they're going to need to own the token, and they're going to have to buy it at whatever price it is, if they want to use that system.
And I guess this goes back to my point, where I was saying you've got five people buying $1,000 worth of XRP each.
Yeah.
And 5 people buying £1,000 worth of XRP each. Theoretically, then, if they all bought at the same time, these guys should own more XRP tokens because a pound is worth more than a dollar.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So, okay, if that works out, that the same amount of XRP tokens would represent the same amount of value in each country, which it doesn't, does it?
No, yeah, you're kind of, yeah, I know what you're saying. You're kind of like speculating on the actual main currency of their
Well, I'm not speculating. What I'm trying to say is those 10 people, 5 in America, 5 in the UK.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Now, of course, £1,000 is worth more than $1,000.
Sure.
Like if you compare the two, like if you were to just try and exchange the two, so it's right that for £1,000 you get more XRP tokens, right?
Yeah.
But in America, can you buy the equivalent for $1,000 as to what you'd spend for £1,000 here?
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is if I put an hour's work in over in America, and I put an hour's worth of work over here, obviously, would I get the same amount of XRP? Is that effectively what you're saying?
I guess, yes, in a roundabout way, and I guess it depends what the work is and how fairly your like whoever's paying you is operating.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, to still simplify that down, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because obviously the thing is obviously it's just obviously like you say, it's different geopolitical aspects of things. It's like whatever our government takes from us compared to what America takes from theirs. And
well, it's not just that. I mean, instead of comparing the UK and America, compare the UK and India then.
Yeah.
And a day's worth of work over there
absolutely
will get you a couple of quid.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I think
so again, the system is slightly tilted in favour of
to the Western economy. Yes.
Yeah, but so it's not leveling the playing field at all.
No.
And also factor in the idea that what you're actually doing, because of this cheaper international transactions, you're incentivizing people to potentially, and this isn't about migration, immigration, anything, just at a basic level, you're incentivizing people to leave a poorer economy to come to a richer. I mean, it's all mostly fictional, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
To come here to then send money back there, which exacerbates that problem, and it just tilts the balance even further.
Yeah, okay. But on that same aspect though, because it is easier to move money a lot easier, and like I say, unfortunately, it is growing the current system, but would it allow people to grow this current system over in other countries and allow them to take part in this? But the problem is, like I say, they unfortunately, if that was how we were going to do, would be to brute force our way into other countries like this, like effectively do that. It's effectively like war, like saying, well, you've got to do it this way and giving them no option to opt out.
Well, of course, that's not what I'm suggesting at all.
But would that system potentially, if they wanted it, help them to get like better, like would that help improve their quality of life if we was to enable like effectively money to get to them? Because like I know we're not 100% certain of them, but if we were to get venture capitalists over into other parts of the country, could that necessarily work in regards of helping them, like, shall we say, build them a better economy? I don't want to say better, but
well, and I guess that's it, isn't it? Because there's so many aspects to this that are cultural, religious, whether you know, it's not making a case for religion or anything like that.
Yeah.
So this sort of goes back to the notion of a one-size-fits-all thing, which of course it doesn't.
Absolutely.
You think of the countries that, or the areas that don't care or know about fish. You know, to try and sell them access to fish,
yeah,
suggests that somehow they should want fish, and maybe they all hate fish.
yeah,
Maybe it's against their religion to eat fish. Or, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do get it, and I think this is the problem that with this system that we've got, is we're brute forcing our way through. And I mean, we've got to look at the resources and other things that we're using. I mean, I know this is going to be another topic, but the amount of graphics cards that we use, that barely leave China for various operations. I mean, if we're going to have that, we can't cope with that now, but if we're going to have that across the world, like, we've just increased a supply problem, and there's only so many minerals on this planet that can do things. But like I say, it's going to create a lot of more problems. It's going to create a hell of a lot of more problems. But
yeah, so I guess as alluring and interesting as this technology is, to go right back to the very start of the conversation, where you and I both like tech. This room's full of it, your room's full of it. Do you know what I mean? We use it for a living, which is how we earn our money. So, I'm not some kind of thug that suggests we need to go back to the Stone Age.
No, I don't want anyone watching this thinking that I'm a hypocrite either. Just I think, like, I like having these conversations with people.
Well, it's better to have a conversation than not to have one. I always sort of say that. So. But what I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm not convinced that the expansion of technology, particularly as concentrated it is in a very small number of extremely influential people's hands,
yes,
is going to be the field leveler that it's touted to be.
No, well,
history, if it's going to teach us anything, it's that people who, occupy the positions of power, and authority and whatever, I'm not trying to get all kind of political or anything, because
if I could just add one point in here, I know it's a good thing, but I just got the urge to mention it. It's like all these so-called decentralized finances, that platforms and things that are running on the Ethereum network, they're going, great, we're decentralized, but then when you look at it, they're running on Amazon Web Services, which is like, we'll host it for you. It's like, you've got full control of it. It's like
it could just get switched off in an instant. Proof that existence. Absolutely.
Like, just because it's the easy, like you say, just because it's always the easiest solution doesn't necessarily mean it's the best.
No, agreed. And that was one of the things you said earlier, that people will naturally gravitate towards the easier solution. But it's usually most of the worst things about the world we live in are sold to us on the back of how convenient it will be.
Absolutely.
And it's a very, very compelling sales pitch for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And one of the issues, I think, with crypto and digital currencies and stuff like that is, on the surface, just like lots of other things, they sound ideal. Like it's wonderful idea. Stick it to the central banks, man. It's like power to the people, and I'm kind of all for that as an idea.
Like back once again with the renegade master, I totally.
But just look at the people who are really sort of occupying the prime positions in the crypto markets, all of them. I mean, there are a few people that seem to have sprung up from nowhere and are doing extremely well for themselves, but once they join that particular club,
look at MicroStrategy never mentioned Bitcoin until he took a $1 billion loan out, and now it's in his best interest that Bitcoin goes up. So
of course. But that's again, that's not even the notion that is ever going to be used as a currency. That company is going to actually buy and sell its suppliers and using, and it's just garbage. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
It's speculation. It's because it's considered an asset that's going to go up in value. Which let's not pretend anymore that it's a cryptocurrency. It's not a currency. I know at an individual level you can spend it, as a
Yeah.
currency.
Yeah.
But the majority, if we're going to look at use cases, the majority of use cases now for most cryptos, not just Bitcoin, are get into it, buy low and sell high.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. I mean, sure, I mean there is an element of me that is part of that problem. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush about it.
Well, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong either.
No.
I guess if somebody's just going to say, do you know what? I need to make some money. You know, I've got a future to think of. I've got a family. I need to plan for my future, whatever. And do you know what? Buying some Bitcoin now is looking like a good bet because it's probably going to go up. Whether they're right or not, I'm not saying that that's
yeah,
but,
sure.
And so I'm literally in it to win it. You've got to be in the game to stand a chance. I'm going to put some money in. It's going to go up, and I'm going to sell, and I'm going to make some quick, easy money. Like, if that's what your stated intent is, then that's no different from buying an antique chair off eBay and then selling it a year later because it's gone up in price. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but let's not pretend that it's the savior of humanity or a currency at that point.
No, definitely not the definitely not the savior of humanity. No, it's I totally get what you're saying. I mean, there's, like I say, there's plenty of cryptos with different use cases that's supposed to make lives, or the promise to make lives a lot easier. But like you say, easiest isn't always
at what actual cost?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're plugged into the matrix and you never have to get out of your cell because you're drip fed and you know whatever else, and you've had all your wishes programmed as sort of, well, what more could you possibly want?
Well, I love the complex nature of life. Like you go in the car. I know we're a little bit off topic, but you go in a car and everybody's got their own story of where they're going, what they're doing, and other things. Like I love that, absolutely love it. And if you take all that away, well, you can just sit here at home and do nothing, and we'll look after you. We'll give you a universal income, and you don't get to experience the pains of life, which to me is the pains is what makes life enjoyable.
Well, it you know, the actual pains themselves aren't necessarily enjoyable.
No,
but they do
like that. But I mean, the problem.
I know that's not what you were saying. I'm just making a joke, but I guess that they are the things that drive us on to better things, and you know, our sort of goal is to always contribute something more than we take over the span of our lives, and the next generation end up better off than the previous one.
Yes. And
you know, it all sounds a bit kind of fanciful, pay it forward stuff. But I mean, essentially, that is what has happened for millennia, which is why, you know, in some ways we're all better off than we used to be. But I'm not sure how much longer that's intended to go on for.
Well, obviously going on a wider topic here, but like to me, I'd like people to, you know, I'd like to venture into space, not me personally, but I'd like the human race to venture into space and, you know, advance the civilization off this planet. And do you know what I mean? That to me is what I'd like to happen, because
it would be nice if we got civilization sorted on this planet first before we start.
But like I say, we've got so many problems. But like for me, providing we don't end up killing ourselves, like problems that we can solve is a good thing. It's at the end of the day, talking about things is a lot better than destruction, and that's what I like to talk. So it's good. So
well, we can wrap up if you like, and we can organise another chat if you like.
No worries, mate. No worries.
All right.
Anyway, well.